One
Not that
with,
we're counting down.
first with the books.
Yes.
First, thank you to Ashley and Nate Burkhart. I think there's a lot of other people to thank too, but without a finance director this year, we still made it on time for when we said we'd have the meetings. I can't tell you how much work that they've been doing on this project. It's just been night after day after night, and there's I think 1,700 formulas that Nate has put in here, Excel formulas that all this stuff ties together. That's dozens and dozens of pre-meetings, new policies for department heads. We started this process really last September when we kind of did an after-action report with the current council on, hey, what worked well, what didn't work well, and then went into much earlier department head budgeting in the systems, multiple department head meetings, some really tough meetings with follow-up when submissions came in, so I get to city manager recommendation budget, but Nate and Ashley were above and beyond. They put a lot of things on the back burner to get us to this point, so thank you. But we also have a long way to go. I kind of went into this budget this year as thinking of it as a maintenance budget, and knew we had some headwinds going into it, and really, with an expectation to say no, and that's going to get us to kind of where we need to go. And I'd say we kind of, one of the process changes we made was to bring things up further in the kind of new requests, all batched together. But there's, as you'll see with the groups tonight, there is not a ton of new requests. Even at some of the new requests that came in from the managers, when I sort of talked about the general budget headwinds that we were facing, they pulled them out at the department level. They're like, you know what, we understand this is not the year. So tonight we're gonna do kind of an overview of the budget books. I know we have three new counselors who haven't gone through this process before. And then we'll hear from our code officer with a new request, our Parks and Rec director, who's kind of representing a new request, as well as our director of planning and urban development, and Jason Ingalls, our IT director. He had probably the biggest new request here, but he really can't even speak right now. He's getting over a cold, and so we're gonna push that one back. Although, they were almost all no's anyways, and especially this one. But I do feel like I'd like Jason to come in and kind of talk about the IT pressures. He's under a lot of service demand pressures, and I think that's one of the things I'm really thinking about in this budget process, which is said no to a lot of things. It's not because people were trying to be frivolous and saying, hey, I'm looking for a new IT. It's because, Nate works in IT and does service requests for a zillion different things, including a lot for the council. And he also did all the Excel formulas in our Cassell budgeting stuff. That's not something a typical IT deputy director does. But the two of them just do an enormous amount of work. So while my recommendation on that was no for this year, I do feel like we need to talk a bit about IT service demands and what we might be expecting in future years. I'd also note.
I might add to that, if I may, and I think it's a great time to say, those two guys are running their department and helping other departments, and they are always monotone with a beautiful attitude and a can-do approach. That's an impressive department.
I like the monotone.
That's an interesting addition, yeah.
But I like that, just kind of even keeled.
They are.
Yeah, they really are.
They're amazing.
Yeah, I say, especially without the finance director, and kind of from where we've come from. I'm approaching the 2-year mark, but when I arrived here, Steve and I guess Nancy probably remembers the day when, they handed for this meeting the counselors essentially a blank book with tabs in it, and then departments would come in and give some spreadsheets, and then the spreadsheets would change fonts and go to Word documents. And I sort of arrived about halfway through this process being there, and I save this as the FY25 failed budget, abandoned on April 30th, 2024. I'm actually somewhat surprised it took me 29 days to say we have to start from scratch. But that's where we started from, a little less than 2 years ago, and and now we're here, and we rebuilt this that same year in 6 weeks and got it in just before the deadline. We revamped the processes a lot last year, so that it could be easier institutionally to move forward from. We made it, this whole process, not just getting the numbers in, but it's a full analysis of the previous year's spending as well, and edits, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in my memo discussion before we get to some of the new requests. And I also know I'm bringing in Roddy on Parks and Rec, because that's one of the new requests. It's really just a consolidation of a bunch of different line items, but we're going to have to really spend some time there. But, this has really, in many ways, become kind of how we audit the systems to optimize too, is we didn't have any prior year actuals in these books for going into FY25, so we didn't have a lot to go by. So every year, it's going to take a little while to get those prior years to really dial in what the numbers are, and there's been some surprises in revenue estimations based on overestimations for FY25 or FY24 actuals that we budgeted into FY26, and then they weren't actually living up to those revenue estimations. That's one of the kind of headwinds we're facing, is like we're bringing back down our revenues in certain categories to different levels. So with that, like I said, even with looking to say no to a lot and just kind of maintain our current service arrangements, we're still looking at a 7.8% increase between municipal, school, and county. For comparison totals, the prior year was 3.3% for FY26, and before that, for FY25, it was 7.3%, and the year before that, the year before I arrived, was 17.2%. Oddly enough, if you go even further back, you'll see some like 0% increases on the budget. And that's in like FY21, 22. And Steve and I, we talked kind of about the yo-yo budgeting. And those are the highest inflationary years on record. There's no way that the city maintained, and it kind of went back to this, like draining reserves, nothing was being tracked anymore. I think that's why you have that 17.2% pop in FY24. It's to kind of pay back a lot previously. So, while keeping it as low as possible with inflation is what I want to do, I also don't want to sell you a bill of goods about this is what the budget's going to cost and then put that into an out year either. We really have worked very hard to maintain accuracy and transparency. This budget's going online as a draft form. This is the third time we've put the budgets online. It's really important to me that this is where we're at. If there's a mistake in here, please point it out. If we want an estimation interchange, we move forward on that, because it is a living document. This one really is it's a foundational document that is going to help the system overall. Ashley and Nate are critical to this, but also Ashley, Nate, and I are kind of desperate so that we're not so required for it. We saw that in 2019, 2020 when Tammy Moat left. The process is kind of left with her. I actually think I've been analyzing a few other, like the county budget issues in Washington and Penobscot. Similar situations. The finance director who kind of had everything leaves, and the processes leave with them. So how do we not just create a budget that's fiscally responsible and transparent? But due to all the work Nate and Ashley have been putting into this, we're getting closer to, it's not so dependent on any one individual. So, like I said, we're actually, I said no to a lot of requests. We're actually down net negative about 2 FTEs in City Hall. I implemented a backfill freeze a little while ago, just seeing some of the headwinds that we're facing. And so we ended up not backfilling in the code area and the code assistant. We consolidated those roles into the planning code and assessing assistant role. That's also in sort of a response to the earlier decision to add some additional contracting services and assessing, so we can get our tax bills out for the first time, which we will, and next finance committee meeting, you're going to have a good presentation from the consultant on that. But we're lined up to send out the tax bills on time, but we wanted to make sure that we were being cognizant there. We also didn't backfill a role in the highway kind of Parks and Recreation department. We'll talk a little bit more about Parks and Rec and kind of how we've been getting by for this year, just making do with current services. but we felt that it was important this year to keep the FTEs as low as we could. So even with holding back on those 2 FTEs and saying no to a lot of new, we're still at this, for the municipal side, a 7.1% increase on the budget. So like I brought my red pens. I'm going to continue to go through it and find what I can. Some of the headwinds are relative to collective bargaining and payroll costs, which without doing a reduction in force, especially for the union agreements, are really impossible to reopen any of those decisions. So, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars just in those collective bargaining, increases for those departments. They're incredible. They do amazing work, but also a lot of those drive up not just payroll costs, but the benefit, pensions, contributions, employee benefits, health insurance up a lot. We're up almost $500,000 in 1 year on employee benefits. So, so before you even start kind of trying to noodle with the budget, you're dealing with some headwinds in your collective bargaining agreements, your employee benefit increases, a pretty substantial increase in the highway department's budget for debt service on the $2 million in roads we paved this last year. So I'm sorry, council, you don't get to be a part of the council that approved. Some of you do approve those roads and got them in there. You get to be a part of the council that has to pay for them moving forward.
We also get to be the people who drive on the roads that aren't lakes at certain times. And
We do.
the improvements are showing. Now we pay for them.
And there is that here, it's always with time constraints. I want to do a little bit more on just the amount of accomplishments we've made and that we're going to continue to make here, not just here's the headwinds, here's the this, here's why the cost drivers, but, there's $2 million in roads, the partnership with the state on $20 million in roads. That was the biggest complaint I got when I arrived as city manager. The roads are terrible here. It's like Beirut, this place. And then when we all started building all the new roads, it was, what in the world are you doing this all at once? What's going on around here? So hopefully, I know we got a lot of potholes that'll be coming up. But a lot of infrastructure improvements have happened over the last year that are
At Maine DOT, we started to call them speed bumps.
speed bumps.
Speed holes, yeah.
Yeah, and this year we do have
Especially when we had a work zone set up. Yeah.
we did have a bit of debt service fall off. TIF funded debt service. We talked a lot about that, I know, in the new TIF districts, but the current TIF districts were proposing to move forward with some of the unallocated TIF funding for the Bayside Road reconstruction. So I think Sarah talked a bit about that at a previous workshop. She's helped secure, which we're going to ask for approval for in the next city council meeting, and that'll be a $750,000 match from the state to the city's $750,000 appropriation that we're requesting in this budget cycle or this budget process for the next one. But that would be through TIF funds to fund basically future debt service on that project. So just another smart way the city is using TIF, 59 cents in the dollar funding to fund a big infrastructure project and matching that to $750,000 in state funding on a road that's, in really tough shape. And we're probably gonna need to do 2 or 3 of those municipal partnership initiatives to get that road done. But I might revisit my memo I always do this too, I should note for counselors, is I'll do my initial kind of here's where we're at memo, we get through this whole thing, and then I put together a new memo like this is the actual budget. Here's what made it in, here's what's not in there. Some of the other cost drivers is full year funding of previously added positions. This is something that I noticed was pretty common, I'd say, in the city of Ellsworth. Where it's like, hey, we're asking for half a position this year.
Right.
And sure, that's half a salary in that current year and half of benefits, but the next year, you gotta cover that full freight. So that was with the police officer from this year, it was half a police officer, now it's a full police officer recovering. It was half of 1.5 firefighters, now we got that full firefighter piece. And also that's been, I think for the last 3 or 4 years, the fire departments that went to full EMS services, we've been adding 2 a year. There's no new fire requests in here, there's no new police requests in here for additional staffing either, that really appreciate those groups. They're feeling service pressures too, and I know it was a big sacrifice for them and their teams not to be there. The water system and utility related support, as we've noted, we're doing a $20 million plus complete replacement of the water treatment plant. In order to kind of get ahead of that, we pushed forward with a rate increase, but the city, because of our water supply protection cost to be at 30% of the whole system, that's putting a new increased amount for the city this year. So we don't really get anything for that. It's just good, budgeting for a future year when that debt service will come online. So we don't have our ratepayers take as much of a hit there. Same thing with the assessing investment. As I mentioned before, that's something we moved forward with this budget cycle. Paid for the TIF through this cycle, but next cycle it's apportioned into the city budget. So there's a little bit of an increase there as well in assessing. And then Parks, Recreation, and Facilities, that's the big one where there's been some increases here, but we're really maintaining service levels, staffing levels of we robbed Peter to pay Paul in departments, and we're kind of keeping that there, but in the budget it shows up as a lot of new funding requests, but it doesn't show we'll go through this a little bit more, Parks, Trees, and Cemeteries used to be under the Highway Department, so we pulled that out of the Highway Department, and now it's under Parks and Recreation. That's not a new request, and that was one of I'm sure Tabitha, the things the Arbor Commission noted, all of the things there was 2 separate plantings accounts. There was, this for recreation. We were spending a lot of money in those categories, but we didn't have anybody overseeing it. So this year, Roddy did an incredible job of consolidating all those pieces into Parks and Recreation, and then a facilities budget as well that truly accounts for all those different items in one place. So it looks like a larger increase than it really is. County taxes as well, another sharp increase. They're at about I think a 9.9% increase over the year. We don't have any choice on that matter. Some of the revenue headwinds, we had mentioned previously a personal property assessment snafu that has led to a $200,000 clawback from the state. They claw back that funding by not giving us as much reimbursement revenue on things like tree growth and other pieces, so we kind of have to plan for less revenues in those areas to pay back the too much revenues that we received in a previous budget cycle. So
Charlie, does it all come out at once, or do they stagger that over a couple of years, or?
it kind of comes out as the reimbursement comes out. So we were notified of this, we agreed, and we're thankful to be able to pay it back that way as opposed to you owe us this all
But you
at
said
once.
not in a single year.
It kind of is so they reimburse for tree growth. All right, well, they check out your account. If you still have a balance, they pull it from tree growth. And then the homestead comes in, and these all come in different times of the year. So it's basically they're going to keep reducing the amounts of these reimbursables over the next 2 years. And it was like 100 and some thousand, I think, for this year. And then the other piece is probably going to be in next year. So we're just planning for those not to come in as much.
Thanks.
We also saw some variances, some pretty substantial ones between FY25 and FY26, what the actuals came in at, even above that level. So we're dialing back down those revenues to where we think that they're going to be. Also, just, the putting some stronger financial controls. I know you've already seen this and heard this from me a couple times, but it was an audit finding of departmentals over budgets in previous years. So now we're going to be coming to council anytime there's an expected overage that's required by the charter. We don't want it to be an audit finding again, but we either have to pull from a reserve account or a department that doesn't have sufficient budgeting. So there's some pieces of that. And then fund balance and reserves, I know the unexpected things like the reimbursement for the property issue, the property issue about the Supreme Court. That was $120,000 in reserve balance. Some of these other pieces that, if they do require reserve funding, like how do they get repaid? Do we need to put another $120,000 in this budget to pay back that fund balance reserve account? And I make a distinction between fund balance reserve account, which is, it's down to $90-some thousand. That was the first time I used that to repay, as opposed to an undesignated fund balance, which most fully modern and financially up-to-date cities have. And I haven't considered the city having an undesignated fund balance since I've been here because our accounts across the board haven't been reconciled. And I noticed in previous years, there's over $1 million in addition to the police station that got added, and then you look in the council order, it says pull 1 million blank, blank, blank from the city's undesignated fund balance. And that, like, knowing what I know when I got here, like that, that was not a real undesignated fund balance. That only exists when you're reconciled to date amongst all of your accounts. And this is something to me that's like the biggest concern, that the city is kind of running without an undesignated fund balance, and with some huge capital projects that have cash coming in and out, and without all of the full reconciliation. It's a big systemic risk to the organization. We've done a lot of great work on the budgeting process and being able to track these pieces, but haven't been able to solve that one yet. Obviously, a new finance director is going to be helpful there, but it's it's something that I'd say is kind of my biggest failure over the last 1 year and 11 months, as I really thought that was going to be solved in like the first 6 months. We got the budget stuff going so well. We made some good progress there, and it's not the fault of the finance team. I mean, they are working their tails off. So there's a systems problem that we need to figure out. I'm really looking ahead to the next year on just what can I pull off on new requests, new anything, to get a great finance director in here, get a great process in order so we can get those undesignated balances put together, and then also start to think about our true reserves. I found an old policy while researching prior to this budget from what is our fund balance reserve policies, and there's kind of a general rule of thumb, but it requires us to have, I think, cash reserves and about $2.5 million, 10% of the city's expenditures for the year, which would be about that amount now. We have about 1 million in cash reserves, but a lot of those are designated for specific kind of type items. We have 3 capital reserve, capital equipment reserve, capital highway equipment reserve. So I'm glad to have the cash balances there, but that needs to be about $1 million bigger. Ideally, you want to fund that counter-cyclically when the economy is good, to build up your rainy day funds and your fund balance. And when the economy is bad, not have to reduce so much government services and then utilize your fund balances in those states. And so me, this is one of the really hard things. It's just nobody's really, and I can see why. We're in a situation where, it could be I think the school said 14% was their initial net increase. They're trying to get to 8%. We're at 7.1% or 3% now. We're trying to get down a little bit further. But building that fund balance, and it could be at the cost of people's jobs if you want to do that, if you want to do both, or it's an increase in taxes. I do have a note in here on, well, that is the bad news, the headwinds. It's also, I think, really important to talk about the good news in the economy in Ellsworth, which is this is a rapidly growing economy, probably one of the fastest growing economies in the state. I actually had charts in here from populations in Millinocket over the last 25, 30 years versus Ellsworth. And, they're just, it's basically an X. And Millinocket's mill rate, you're having to say goodbye to fire departments, or I don't know if that's specifically to them, but I remember reading stories about them and it's service reductions, or it's putting an incredibly new tax burden on your community at really high levels to cover basic services. And worse, that stuff kind of feeds a vicious cycle, right? You stop investing in economic development, in good modern city services, in capital and infrastructure. Businesses stop coming, people stop coming to live in your community, tax revenues decrease further. And Ellsworth has took this mostly from the Ellsworth American article that was written last year on this, and included kind of the debt service, which our former finance director happened to this table, has a comparatively low tax rate, both as a mill rate at the 15.66 level, one of the lowest of any kind of service center in the state, but also as a property tax on median income, and as the property tax as a percent of median income, and a comparatively low debt level. So while there's been some increases here, it's Ellsworth is a pretty competitive, and we can see that with our business growth. And as I mentioned last time around, new hotel, that's $20 million plus, a new valuation that can be hopefully taxed. Probably may not get to 100% this year, but pretty close. New tractor dealerships, tons of new housing units, tons of new business development. You know, you take $700 million in increased valuation over the last 5 years since FY '21. You're looking at like $11 million in new, at a 15.66 mill rate. That's $11 million in additional tax revenue for the city in new growth. So, you know, if that hadn't happened, in order to kind of maintain services on the current tax base, that would have been a much bigger shock. So continuing to invest in the city, continuing that great growth profile for the city is, I think, pretty essential moving forward as well. And I just say also in like staff and organizational capacity, we've, you know, we've really made a lot of forward progress and momentum. We have a great project management team that's keeping just about, you know, you just saw the TIF redesigns getting passed. Ordinance reform is lined up on deck next. Our new 10-year capital improvement planning initiative. These were things that, you know, fell by the wayside for 5 or 6 years, and you know, and are really getting the city back on track with these areas. So trying to attack this budget cycle by limiting new requests as much as possible, trying to stay within the increases that are there, but also maintaining the kind of current service platform that we have and the high degree of operational efficiency that we've developed over the last couple of years. So with that, I think maybe I'll just go through the budget overview section for a second. You guys want to open to page, so page 11. You've got your schedule for the time forward. You know, the book has obviously a table of contents, which I know probably doesn't impress many of you, but as you can see where we started was...
Those of us who were there at those times appreciate it.
So, you know, this really pulls all the expenditures, all the revenues, all the adjustments, and that's what makes up your, on page 14 here, your total request between municipal, school, and county on the tax commitment of $29,268,593, which is a 7.8% increase from the $27,155,149 from the prior year. You can see down in the municipal budget, you know, while these are general numbers, a lot of these things are, you know, really require going into the details. So you can take like, hey, municipal revenues from FY '26 are down from 11 million to 10 million. Like what's triggering that? Well, a lot of that's like a bond from last year, the ban. Like we had an influx of $1 million. That's a revenue, but it's also an expense. That's also why, like, wow, expenses are almost net neutral to the previous year. It's like, well, no, we just talked about a lot of those headwinds for the expenses, but, you know, the expenses in large measure dropped because we're not doing, you know, millions in roads this year. So there's nuance to kind of why the percentages may change. It's not necessarily just all a spending increase or they clawed back all of these revenues. A lot of times, like how the bonds and the bans come into the budget year to year can affect those. County tax, as we mentioned, is you know, non-negotiable. You can also see the school's net appropriation at 16.66 million over the city's net municipal appropriation of 11.8 million. You know, and you can kind of see this too, and that we have this data back to 2009. And I can bring it forward at some point. Just, you know, the school is consuming a larger and larger share of the net municipal appropriation over the years, which, you know, and the city council has line item veto on anything in here, meaning, you know, if a majority of the council wants something pulled out, they can, during the final appropriation process, we'll have a project, or you know, you can say this is a line that I'd like to take out. And if I think it's 4 out of 7 vote, then it can be taken out. That's not this case with the school budget. The school budget, you can choose not to approve the entirety of the budget, maybe give general direction, but doesn't have the same kind of line item authority that we have here. It's also, if you're trying to pull down that 7.8% from the smaller municipal side of things, it's more difficult. You have to kind of cut deeper to pull down the entirety of the budget. So that's hence the importance of Amy's difficult work to get from 14 to 8% for the school side, in our difficult work of trying to get from 7.3%, down to what I'd like to be more in the 4 or 5 range. So that's kind of where we're at in those pieces. You'll see in this municipal appropriation side of things as well, it can kind of go by general budget. You'll see that, like, look at employee benefits on page 15 at the top there. We go, this is with less employees, we're going from 3,520,000 to 4,013,000. And you look at FY26, when employee benefits were at 2,600,000. This is a big growth category that is very expensive. Then there's some other smaller things too, which are kind of like changes, which is why we'll print out a final version of the overview. But if you have questions, ping me directly. But like the FY26 budget for external organizations from 37,000 to 171,000 or 117,000 if the manager adjusts. Really, that was at 117,000 last year, and my manager adjust is keeping it at 117,000 this year. But we consolidated a lot of the external organizations, which were divided between like pretty nebulous definitions of social services versus, and it kind of became confusing. So we wanted to just be like, these are the external organizations that are not city hall commissions, that are not city hall organizations, so we can kind of track that spending, across categories as opposed to it being buried in different kind of budget areas. It was all kind of in recreation before. There was just a miscellaneous.
The ones that are in the
Gotcha. The facilities maintenance is one as well. We haven't added any employees. We're going from 381 to 643. Part of that's due to the Moore Center. We've increased, we're owning the building and maintaining it. It's a bigger cost for us, but it's also, what's not reflected here is there's revenues associated with that building from operating it as well. So that's not just wholly that request. Same things with Parks and Rec, going from 385 in the previous year to 697. That doesn't account for a lot of the consolidation of other budgets that were put in there. We're not adding 4 or 5 employees in Parks and Rec. In fact, they're just realigning the current highway arrangement into Parks and Rec. So, and then our expenditures breakdowns, if you go to 19, you'll see, your pie charts. You'll see where spending can go from cost center to cost center in general. I'll note capital improvements, that's going to come at the end. This doesn't include really any capital improvements right now. Sarah's been working on that piece, so we'll kind of get the operational side of the budget to where we can get it, and then we're going to talk about capital improvements and what we want to move forward with. We're already doing the track and the fire apparatus this year, and the recommendation that is in here is the Bayside Road reconstruct, but there may be some additional items that we could consider for band and bonds in next year that we would finance the debt for, and then saddle a future city council with that $400,000 new debt service payment. As you move through them, you go from expenditures, breakdowns by organizations and areas into the revenue breakdowns. On page 27. And then we get to page 33 with the new requests, which we'll get to shortly. Just before we get over to new requests, once we get, there's another kind of structure to the budget on, each section has its own little cover page on what the departments do. We try to make it pretty forward-facing so that citizens can look in here as well, see changes from previous years. Should know just another thing about this, obviously, in addition to not having really all the departments in when they started the budget process like this, there was no overview section. So there was no really kind of an idea of where we needed to go. So with that, before we get to the new request, any questions about? I know you'll have to sit with these documents for a while too, and if you want to, if talking in front of YouTube for detailed questions that you don't want to ask, feel free to arrange a meeting with me, and I can take you through the details too if you have questions, or obviously ask anything when we're going through the process. With that, I think we'll start with Robert from our code enforcement office, who has a request for a short-term rental, what do you call it? Short-term rental
Wow, it's a request for the short-term rental software
software system.
to fund that.
So are we diving at page 34 with
Thir-
Robert?
34, well, he has a detail request on 36,
Okay.
On what?
Page
36.
page 36.
34 and then 36.
Ready? So the short-term rental software costs about $40,000 to implement this year. And that software will allow me to do all of my inspections, scheduling. It'll do it all for me. I can set aside time to, or blocks of time for them to pick when they want to have their inspections. I can, they do all of the permitting online. It's basically eliminates the need for having an in-office assistant to handle and micromanage all of the short-term rental stuff that I thought we were gonna need last year. With the, finding this software through OpenGov, it's actually gonna save us quite a bit of money as far as payroll and benefits and all of that to implement that software. It's gonna get to the point where basically all I have to do is look at my schedule and know where I have to go, when I have to go, other than clicking a few buttons in OpenGov to approve these permits for the short-term rental registration. I gave that short-term rental registration high-level overview at the workshop a few months ago, where I showed that there's probably a few hundred, if not 500 to 600 of them in Ellsworth. We don't know, and the reason why I think that we need to track that data is because, for a couple of reasons. One, just health and safety reasons for the guests that are staying at those places. As the code enforcement officer, and I'm also the local health officer for the city of Ellsworth, I have to go into every hotel motel in the city once a year and do an inspection to make sure that that place is safe for guests of the city who are coming to enjoy Ellsworth or Acadia or wherever they're going, to make sure that that place is safe for them to stay. And we're not doing that currently for Airbnbs or other short-term rentals. This software would allow me to be able to have a registration platform where the only thing I want to do as far as any regulation would be just to make sure that the places are able to be stayed in. They're not an unsafe place to stay. They have egress for the bedrooms. They aren't trying to cram 12 people into a 3-bedroom house, that sort of thing. That's just a basic health and safety. So, if you have any questions.
Yeah. Are we going to expect, after we, if we were to do this, gather the information, are we then going to expect to have them get a lodging license for that Airbnb, or we have to figure out?
So
if that's
there'd be a
what we wanna
short-term
do?
rental registration, which would be different than a lodging license. There'll be a fee attached to the registration that goes into, that goes towards the cost of having to pay for the software to manage all this, as well as my time or my deputy's time to go out and do the inspection, do the walk through the home. It may not, but depending on how many we actually find out that we have in Ellsworth, I may not have the capacity to do an annual inspection. It may be an every 2 or 3 year thing. But, you know, that if we have 500 of these in Ellsworth and I have to add 500 inspections to my calendar, yeah, we already issued almost 1,000 permits, let alone short-term rental last year. So, yeah, it would add a lot of, a lot more inspections, so I'm not sure we could do it annually, but the idea would be that the registration fee would go towards paying for the software to track this, and help pay for the administrative costs and inspection costs.
So there's the potential then that we could really, this number will be offset by revenue.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, no, I think that it could easily be offset by that registration fee. That was you weren't.
I
don't
was.
know. You were here, you here for my fees? I can't remember.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, no, it was it
many
was
meetings.
last May, so.
Yes.
When I updated the fees for the department, that was my goal, was to bring the department up to as close as I could, my best guess, to at least cost neutral.
Yeah.
I think the short-term rental, so that's what we're aiming for, is to make it neutral, if not a little,
Boost there.
get a little revenue for the department, because we, for so many years, were so, under, in the red for code, so.
So tonight is only about new requests, but when we get into your budget, we will see the revenue that will offset
Correct.
this.
Yeah, if you went to the code budget, it's in there,
Yep.
the estimate.
Oh, okay.
And I should note that, this is one of the few yes recommendations on the condition that we add a registration fee to short-term rentals. This is a tough decision for me. It's also in my memo, I didn't get, but I think the city does need to look at revenue generating things. That could include some other things that I put in that memo as well. This is the only one that's like put into the actual budget this year. I hate to tax, I don't know, a fee on this is a tax, this activity. It's generated a lot of value in the city, a lot of growth, but it's also had a pretty big cost on housing and infrastructure. And, a lot of the businesses, as you mentioned, that pay a fee, I'm highly opposed to caps, to setting floors and ceilings on prices, and
It'd be interesting to find out exactly how many we have.
yeah, and there's owner occupied requirements we could do that. I think we can do that from the state, and that's kind of one of the other pieces to me too.
There
is-
probably isn't that many of them out there that is as honest as I am.
Probably not.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, no,
I mean,
And the state already takes 9%, right?
correct. So,
Yeah, because different platforms do different things. I tried 2 different platforms. I now just go with one platform because it's easy. It's cost effective, and I don't have to worry about the lodging tax. But there are people out there that aren't even doing that.
that is the other,
Yeah.
Charlie reminded me, that is the other half of this, is that it has an impact on our housing in the area. It drives housing prices up, which is great if you want to sell. But if you're looking to buy, it makes it really difficult,
There's different reasons
for sure.
for why a bunch of us do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And like with me, I had tried to get nurses and medical people, doctors and them, to come in and stay. But then, to me, the definition of short-term is not a year.
Correct. No, so short-term is technically supposed to be 180 days or less.
Right,
Over that, it's considered long-term.
right. And then it becomes apartments.
Yeah, that's a state definition, that's not us. That's
Yeah.
state.
Yeah.
Is there any plan, or is there an expectation that the state might request this information that we gather, or we would share this?
Well, the state already knows, but they don't share with us.
Oh,
They collect a 9% tax on all of it.
And so they have that record.
They have that information, but they don't share with us.
And that's just the people that are actually paying the lodging taxes?
Correct, and I'm sure there are some, I don't know if there, maybe, black market,
Oh,
short-term
well,
rental, maybe.
Airbnb and stuff do not necessarily report that directly, so that is up to the person that has the rental to,
Yeah, so.
to provide that information to the state to be taxed on, so, yeah, I was just wondering.
I'm not sure if
Yeah,
they'll,
but I have had people who have booked with me through Vimo. And then I dropped that one, and I'm upfront and honest about it. I use the Airbnb platform, because if I make over a certain amount, they issue me a 1099. And everything that I can pull off in that, it even breaks it down on whether, which one it is, whether it's my house or the house next door versus also upstairs and downstairs. And, like I said, the taxes are taken out of it. But I have had people who have stayed there and call me up and go, is it possible I come over here and stay? I really don't want to book through Airbnb.
Is that how they talk?
Oh, yeah, they do. And it's like, you know what I say? You please, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Because Airbnb adds insurance to what I have, on
Right,
top of
yeah.
what I already have for rental insurance.
I just want to make sure that, somebody asks me if this information is going to be shared with the state or whatever, that,
Yeah.
I don't
I mean,
know if I necessarily
I'm
care
unaware
either
of-
way, but.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything that they're planning on doing that in the future, but they always could. They could always pass some statute where we have to share it.
So this is a recurring fee? So
It'll-
gone are the days of buy the discs and load it up?
Unfortunately, the 40,000 is, I believe the, I had to put this on an estimate. They couldn't give me hard numbers until after the budget book came together, but the 40,000 was the estimate for the first year, and after that, it goes down significantly.
I would think it would, yeah.
Yeah.
Typically with the open gov type systems, there's like a onboarding, we're on meetings once a week on procurement and asset management, and so the first year for the professional services to like implement the system, and then it drops off by like 75% usually, just for the, like the subscription service moving forward. And
Okay, so just fill me in here. So this process of finding out how many Airbnbs we have and instituting a licensing requirement for them, is there a pathway already to penalties for, is there a grandfather period in mind? I mean, has that all been worked out?
So currently have a rough draft for an ordinance to handle all of this.
Okay, so-
It's gonna have all of it laid out, everything that's required of them, which I'm not requiring the moon. But there will also be penalties if they don't register, yes.
Okay, all right.
And it's a registration, not
Like I said, the
not a
only.
license, right?
Yeah, it's a registration, so I don't issue licenses, the clerk's office issues licenses.
But we're not proposing a license for short-term rentals at this time,
No, it's just,
we're
it's
asking you to
the
register.
registration, and the only thing out of that I'd like to do is the health and safety inspections. But-
yeah, before I'd say one way or the other on that, I'd, like to dive into the legal, just the license versus, because to me, that's why the recommendation is kind of, if we're gonna do a $40,000 system to find out how many, like, we can pull the numbers from the state or request, and AirD&D, we have a pretty good general estimate, but if we're gonna have a system like this, I think I'd only want to move forward with it once the council is aligned that we are gonna have a fee, whether you call it a registration or a licensing fee, whether it's in the clerk's office to collect that, or whether it's in the codes office. I'm sure we'll do kind of what's in line with other cities and towns that have gone forward with this, but it's roughly probably $200-300 to fee on this activity could be for your first unit, could be owner occupied. I don't know if there's a difference between that and those who have like multiple investment properties. If you can have multiple fees on those pieces, I have a list of like what other cities and towns have done in this category. And then, what that inspection process would be like. Is there like initial self-certification that you'd have to fill out to?
Yeah, there would be, for the inspection part of it, it would basically just be like doing a certificate of occupancy for someone's home. I'm not gonna go in and make you do all kinds of renovation. I'm just gonna go in and make sure that you have basic things like smoke detectors, and that the rooms you want to use for bedrooms have proper egress. Otherwise, you can't use that, you can't use that room for a bedroom. What they do after I leave, who knows? But as far as the city's concerned, it's, they have 2 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms or whatever, they're allowed to sleep 4 people or 8 people, there's 2 people per bedroom. That's the standard.
Related to that, I suppose because we don't have a registry, stories that I've heard where they're in neighborhoods, do we have any data on the number of noise complaints or other complaints that come from short-term rentals? Because we don't have a registry, we don't know. But it's, I think something to think about as we're looking at what is appropriate is if we've got the registration and noise complaints come in, we'll be able to see.
I've gotten more light complaints than noise complaints.
Light.
Yes, people whose lights are bothering their, they're there at all hours of the night coming and going, and the noise is not as much. More light complaints.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we have had some interesting light complaints. You never know what
I
you're
actually
gonna-
had that issue too with like in my landscaping business, putting trees in between the new Airbnb and the existing home that was there like all the time. Maybe it was the light and they don't want to see the people either, so.
Yeah.
It hurts
Yeah,
my
it's
wallet
buffer
when I
too.
look
Yeah,
next
buffer.
door, certain ethnic groups are, and I just know my meter's going.
Excuse me, what was that comment? I'm sorry, I didn't
They,
hear.
there's different people from different parts of the country that stay up later, and their,
New Yorkers.
their days are different.
New Yorkers.
They really, I mean, you can't really bank on which one it is. I've had some people from Spain come over here, because their daughter's getting married in Acadia National Park, because she's going to school at College of Atlantic, and I look over before I go to bed.
Well, I'd say we had over in Castine my in-laws. They throw quite the party too, and they are loud as you can be. We're having another wedding. It's one of the nice things of moving. I think I would have said when I first moved to Castine that if you would have said, "Are you living next to your in-laws?" That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. I'll never do it. But now that I have kids, and I have in-laws to help take care of the kids, and fortunately, like a lot of like their aunts and uncles live in the area, their kids come back to get married in Castine. I don't have to travel for weddings, which is a nice little cost savings too. So there can be, and we have an Airbnb problem, I'd say in Castine as well. A lot of the stuff is being overrun by that, so.
Like my daughter, she lives in Scotland, she does not pay for electricity. There is
want their
no
motto.
meter over there.
Oh, we can take that too. Any other questions on Robert on short term?
I think we're good with this. This is
All right.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, then we will pencil that in. This one I think could be a little I never know. Discuss leasing a potential bus garage as a potential.
stay.
It creates controversy. So this one seems to me like it could be controversial. I know there's a lot of people who like really want Airbnbs out of places and short-term rentals, and they pressure put. And there's also people that are like property rights are inviolate, and this is a tax on my property that shouldn't be there. There's kind of both sides of this. So I think we'll need to have Robert move pretty quickly on workshops, potential ordinances, get some community feedback, so we can get to the right mix if we want to move forward with this.
I think if you look at it, it can be presented as beneficial across the board. I mean, because being able to control or to monitor, to make sure, we need to know what's there. But not only that, but it gives, I suspect this software would give a chance to look at density of Airbnbs and short-term rentals. So you don't have, and that's to the advantage of people thinking about opening an Airbnb,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So.
Yeah, we could have a report
Or
each year and
thinking
kind
of
of.
moving to a neighborhood.
Yes, or thinking,
they thought
yes,
it was a
that they
neighborhood,
thought,
that it really
yeah,
isn't.
that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and
stuff.
that's it, that's a very great point. I agree with you, I'm not opposed,
I'm known for my great points.
very good
This
on
one
it.
right on top of my head.
No, I mean, like I said, there are people out there that are not like me, that I make sure that it's safe.
I'm sure you do.
All right, rock and roll.
Roddy,
I was waiting for my introduction.
Mr. Roddy Erlenbach, famous Roddy Erlenbach.
I'm just playing.
You gotta overlap with the
So we're
others.
gonna, in the spirit of acronyms, we're going from Airbnb to EAB. So it sounds very similar, but it's nothing anywhere close. So my name made the agenda, but I also have Danielle Gift here as, I don't know if I want to call you a subject matter expert, but she did write the Emerald Ash Borer Management Plan for the city of New York. So kind of a good resource for us to have in the house.
I
And
hear
Michael
people
Otsworth.
stay up late in New
Yeah.
York.
You bought
It's New
reinforcements?
York, it's the ethnic New York.
And Michael Otsworth, who's our community tree steward, who's here thanks to agreement with Maine Conservation Corps. And then I'm gonna throw Tabitha under the bus as well.
Yes, please.
All four of us regularly attend the Arbor Commission meetings. And this request comes directly from the Arbor Commission. So I'm hopeful that I can answer some of your questions. I'm absolutely confident that anywhere that I don't have the information, the other three people I just mentioned can probably steer us in the right direction.
And you're on page 38 by what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think, would you want to do 37
I haven't
first, or
seen
you
the
want to do
book yet,
38?
so I don't know.
Outdoor facilities or
We could do
38.
38, so we can let,
Nope,
EAV?
we'll do this one first.
yeah, that's the
You've
one I
given us
was,
such a good,
That was
That's the one I
that's
was going
agenda
with.
one.
yeah.
so just some background. I did provide you with a memo. Hopefully you get a chance to read it at some point to help guide your decision on this. The Arbor Commission initially recommended funding allocation in response to the confirmed presence of emerald ash borer in the surrounding communities, which is basically telling us it's an imminent regional threat to Ellsworth. Back on March 4th, the city hosted a public panel discussion at the Moore Community Center that had a lot of great speakers. Among them was a representative from the Maine Forest Service. We had a member from the City of Bangor's Urban Forestry Program, a researcher from the University of Maine's Ash Protection Collaboration across Wabanakik, hoping I said that right. And that individual was actually a postdoctoral research assistant. The panel emphasized the urgent need for municipalities to develop and implement emerald ash borer management plans now, rather than waiting for visible impacts. It's, I think, where the industry gives us guidance is it can take as many as 10 years from the point of infestation to actually see visual evidence that emerald ash borer is here. Proactive management is far more effective than a reactive response, both operationally and financially. To give you an idea of what's going on in the surrounding communities, emerald ash borer is confirmed in Herman, in Bangor, and on Mountain Desert Island. Industry best practice is to start your management plan when it's within 15 miles of you. So we're well within that threshold. And the fact that it's confirmed on Mountain Desert Island is all the evidence we need to just assume that it is here. So there's very little investigating left to be done. We just need to assume that it's here, and we need to deal with it. Plan treatment and removal strategies reduce emergency response costs drastically. It improves public safety and allows for better allocation of staff and contractor resources. Right now, the most effective treatment is chemical trunk injections. They're by far the most effective tool out there, and it's very easy to have a knee-jerk reaction to the cost. But that cost is minimal compared to what it costs to react to it and start removing trees. We have to keep in mind that the mortality rate of an infected ash tree is 100%. 100%. If it has emerald ash borers in the tree, it's confirmed it's gonna die, just a matter of how long. And generally, that takes 1 to 3 years. So you don't have, like, from the time there's evidence. So you don't really have a large window to do anything about it.
Right.
Yeah,
Does the chemical tree trunk injections buy us time or prevent the disease?
the prescription is every other year.
Does that prevent or just buy time, you know what I mean?
It prevents for the short term, as far as my understanding goes, but the prescription is every other year.
For as
Now-
long as you want the trees?
So what's happening right now is the chemical treatment is a stopgap while the state and the federal USDA are working on biological treatments and interventions. My new favorite word is parasitoid. So what they're doing is they've identified the natural predators of the emerald ash borer, and they're working to bring them here and establish those communities of that parasitoid in this environment so it can eradicate emerald ash borer without the need of chemical intervention. That is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a year. There are success stories in the region of where those species have been brought in and introduced, and they are starting to self-sustain and grow the population. It's going to take time, but right now, chemical treatment is the best step as a stopgap. A member of the Arbor Commission is in the industry. He's an arborist. He works for an arborist company. The city of Camden put out an RFP for chemical tree injections. His company responded. I don't have the exact number, but the bid they put out was $65,000 for the city of Camden. Obviously, we have a much more forested area than Camden. I believe we have far more right-of-way trees, specifically specifically ash trees. Michael conducted a street tree inventory of just ash trees last summer. There are 510 of them just in the right-of-way. So those are all trees that are on city property within the right-of-way in close proximity to sidewalks, roads, utilities, and structures. So the 63, if you think about $63,000 or $65,000, which is what the bid went out for Camden to treat all of their trees, if we look at how far $65,000 would go to remove trees that have been killed off by emerald ash borer, that might get you 12 trees.
Thanks.
So we're talking about treating hundreds of trees for the same cost as reacting to the dead ash trees in the right-of-way. When you put the numbers there, it's a pretty, in my mind, pretty easy decision to make, but it's also, either way you look at it, it's a big lump of money. So,
Not only that, but you haven't addressed the points of then what are you going to do with your denuded land?
then you have to plant the
Yeah,
trees.
which, I mean, this has been, you may, and I have had students using this as a debate topic, you know,
Mm-hmm.
should we be treating them? Because, you know, I watch them give the trees their shots on campus, and the kids want to know what's going on. And it's really interesting because it's been between a rock and a hard place. It's going to kill them. That whole avenue along the quad, are you going to replace that with what, saplings? Or are you going to bring in mature trees? You're talking about millions, probably.
Bringing that closer to home, you're talking about half the trees on the library campus.
There you go.
And those are not included in the right-of-way.
Yeah. So what is your thinking on the relationship between the trees we have the power to treat, the ones that belong to, and all those trees that are going to die because property owners don't treat?
So, and feel free to jump in at any point in time, guys. Yeah, I'm just gonna say one thing that's my understanding, that the state has a lot of really great programs out there that can work with private landowners. Michael actually brought to my attention a program that's been going since 2024, I believe, where the state will actually, you can apply for a prescription demonstration, and they will actually come as long as you meet the requirements of your proximity to a confirmed infestation, and they'll treat an area, I think it was up to 6 acres. But the state will come and do that as a demonstration on the effectiveness of the treatment. Obviously, if we move forward with this funding and it allows us to develop a management plan and a strategy and implement that, I would believe in the eyes of the state, that makes us a better applicant or a better recipient of that service.
So, follow up, is there a potential in this treatment, should we pay for it, to build into like a public service campaign for the, okay.
Absolutely.
That sounds like it would be good, because it's not gonna do us good.
Danielle's leaning forward, so I'm gonna let her come up.
Yes, that's a huge component. You're right. The bugs don't know
Yeah.
if it's private or public property, right? Nor do they care. They just like the ash trees. So strategies are public education, letting them know what's going on. grants to do demonstration treatments. There is a bit of herd protection as well. When you treat a certain number of trees on public land, there is some protection for the ash trees that were untreated in that area. So there is a little bit of spillover into the private properties without having to treat those trees. So there are strategies around. I also wanted to address Councillor Nancy Smith's question about whether it was slowing things down or providing protection. The answer is both. It protects the trees in the moment, but it also buys us time to figure out what we want to do, if we need to do more removals or plant more trees to replace that
But it's
canopy.
not like twice and then it's done.
Correct.
It's as long
It
as
is
you want the
ongoing
tree to be
treatment,
on.
correct, yes.
But I think the strategy that we're recommending, to steal from Danielle, the slow ash mortality, by taking a phased approach, we're spreading out the cost over several years, rather than waiting for it to get here and saying, I need several $100,000s to manage this. So I think, I'm sorry, I'm cheating with my notes. Establishing a dedicated funding account now allows the city to spread the costs over time rather than facing a large sudden expenditure. It builds long-term financial sustainability for the emerald ash borer response for as long as it takes. And it also creates a framework to respond to future pest and disease threats once EAB is eradicated. I did highlight in the memo, there are 5 pests and diseases known to be in this region right now. All of them pose a serious threat to the survival of the canopy of various dominant species within Ellsworth, and we're literally just choosing the one that's the biggest threat right now.
But a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Number one, Derp, I just realized, yes, we have a memo from you with all of this. I think that cost-benefit analysis is going to be critical as this moves forward to be able to say this isn't frivolous,
Yeah.
that this is actually the best
There was,
investment.
Michael shared with me the management plan that the city of Bangor developed. They started in 2024. It was updated last October. I did not share it with you tonight because it's a 70-page document, and you just got handed a couple 100-page book. But if you want, I will share that with you. They did a really, really good job of breaking down the cost per tree, of all their different recommended strategies.
If you want to give us a link to it, that
Yep.
would be cool.
Yeah, I will definitely do that.
A couple other things. Yeah, you say that you've got the inventory of city right-of-way trees, and that's the cost that you're talking about here.
So that would be the cost. So the $100,000, if we were going straight chemical treatment, that would treat, so the way they calculate it is you give them the total inches of the measurement that's referred to as diameter at breast height, or DBH. It's a little bit, if I remember correctly, it was 11,000 and change. That $100,000 would treat 11,000 plus inches of DBH. So with 510 trees, we're assuming every tree is 22 inches in diameter, which is not accurate at all. But we're not recommending that we treat every tree, because there are going to be trees that we decide that we're going to remove because they've got more than a 50% dieback already in the canopy. They're leaning towards power lines or structures, or too much of the canopy is overhanging this tree or the street. So in those instances, the risk of waiting and seeing if a chemical treatment is gonna do the trick would not be the most responsible way. So think about literally cutting, I would say you're looking at a 50-50 split between chemical treatment and planned removals. And we won't know exactly what that number is until we move forward this summer and start taking that inventory and working towards developing our management plan.
So, other questions. The department is parks, trees, and cemeteries. So curious if there's been an inventory done of these trees in our cemeteries.
There has not.
And what about, I know we're doing a forest management plan for Branch Lake. Are we looking at ash trees there or in other timberland that the city owns?
That management plan did have a breakdown of the species that are in there, so we can gather information from that management plan.
Just curious what the
And then-
density is
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
ash. I assume the fewer ash as a percentage, the safer they are to protect them from infestation.
Yeah. And I think, the big thing for me is when we present this, a lot of people think about, oh, these are trees in the public forest or these trees on a wooded lot. the three of us went on a tour. We went and looked at a tree inspection for a resident that requested one, and Michael took us to what he believes is the three tallest ash trees in the city's right-of-ways, and they're on Washington Street, and they're on Beals Avenue. They're not out in the middle of the woods, they're right over the
Right.
sidewalks.
I think
So
there's
it's gonna
three
be a very
in front of
immediate
Steve.
impact.
I think your spot right up here has 3 or 4 ash trees right in front of it.
Yep.
There, on the city right of way.
Yeah, and that's, the other part of this, we've been getting requests from residents to go inspect trees on their property that they believe to be in the right of way. The three of us have kind of formed like the tree inspection committee.
Squad.
And, yeah, squad, thank you, the tree squad. So,
You're welcome.
none of them are ash trees, but people are already requesting that the city goes and looks at this and develops a strategy on how we're gonna deal with this tree that's technically on our property. And once we get to the point where we're looking at these ash trees in the right of ways, our expectation is that request for inspections is just going to skyrocket. And then that's a tap on our resources to go address what's being all of a sudden an urgent and emergent response.
And if I remember right, when I was on Parks and Rec in Clinton, we were pushing to get communities down there, really pushing hard. And I think it was around 2008, 2009. Anyways, and we had the Forest Service, Department of Conservation, they gave us stuff, and we, if I remember right, something about, it's not really a lazy pest. It prefers ash trees. So if you've got an ash tree over there, and you've got a nice sugar maple here, it will go to that.
That's, I think, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think you're crossing some of your pests, your invasive
But
pests.
they will go, but they won't.
EAB it will primarily only feeds on ash trees. However, the Asian longhorn
That's
beetle
what it
Yeah.
is.
its main source is the maple tree, but it has about 17 or something like that other species.
Danielle wants to talk again.
That are, yeah,
But, I mean,
I will
it's-
talk trees all day.
So the other,
but I think the costs have come down, but.
Yeah. One of the things that I would like to mention, and this kind of, for me, increases my thought that this is urgent. Ash is, I'm going to get away from talking about the ash trees that are standing up. Ash is one of the best burning firewoods. And if we just look at the amount of firewood that's imported into this area in the summer, bought in Bar Harbor and carried back through, bought wherever and carried back through, I mean,
That's
the
a lot of years.
opportunities for it to travel throughout the state are scary, so.
And it makes great baskets.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm sure it does. Are there any specific disposal practices that you need to follow? So do they generate more money than just leaving it by the side of the road and having somebody?
This
hack
isn't,
it
yeah,
up?
you can't run this through your chipper and then go dump it
Right.
somewhere. If you're going to run it through your chipper then needs to be disinfected
Yeah, that's what I
and
thought.
treated, and it's, yeah.
It
Once it's
also-
dead and handling it and managing it, the costs of disposing of that properly, so you're not contributing to the spread, is very, very expensive.
Yeah, and if I may, the treatment of the wood is to desiccate the larva, because that's what does the damage to the tree. The larva chews around underneath the bark and cuts off the flow of nutrients and water throughout the tree, and that's what kills it. It's not really the adults that do that damage, it's the larva. And so what you need to do is chip it. In New York, we chipped it twice within a quarantine zone, and to at least a 1-inch diameter per the chip. So, like, it is very specific, but that was within a quarantine zone. I think best practice for us would be to chip it, leave it on site, and let it dry out. Yeah.
The map that you've provided is impressive for showing those.
Burns good too.
So I think that's another way to do it.
So the larvae aren't crawling down the street to get to the,
No.
that was what I
They're
thought.
very soft body.
It's where,
That's what I thought.
it's wherever the adults
They do
go.
that.
Yeah.
Rodney, would you give the number again? You said the $100,000 cost is based on the DBH. It was
It's the
something about
DBH.
111.
I have the accurate number right here. I just couldn't find my notebook at the time.
Okay.
So $100,000 would treat 11,428 inches DBH. At
Thank you.
510 trees, that would be assuming an average DBH per tree of 22 inches. Obviously, that's a way larger average than what what we're trying to convey.
And that would be treating all of them when you said,
For $100,000, but that leaves us no money for removal of trees that we're choosing not to treat, because it just wouldn't make sense to do that.
so the $100,000 is not just the treatment, it's, you said a 50/50 balance of treatment and removal.
And we won't know that until we go through the management plan and identify what trees we're proposing to treat and what trees we're proposing to remove. And as I said before,
Right.
the cost to remove the tree is gonna be way more per tree than the cost to treat.
How accurate is staging of this disease? In other words, when you're deciding whether to remove or treat, how accurate is it to stage the tree? As to its state of infection? Is
So-
it a broad window where you,
So once there's actually evidence, visible evidence on the tree, you're pretty much like, the ship is
Okay.
more or less sailed. And I think it's a 50% dieback of the crown is the absolute hard stop where we're not going to treat this tree.
Yeah, because at that point, the tree's not gonna recover, and so you're wasting the chemical, quite frankly.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no point. I was gonna say something else and I forget what it was. It'll come back.
If I remember correctly, the management plan that the city of Bangor presented, they had a bunch of criteria for how they came to that decision on what to treat and what to remove. And it wasn't necessarily evidence of ash borer there. They were working under the assumption that it's here.
yeah,
And if the tree is like dramatic lean towards the utilities, it's over mature, the roots are exposed or damaged, it's a risk of upheaval or uprooting during a windstorm, they're recommending just cut the tree while it's safe to do so. Because once we start talking about removing trees that are already dead, as an arborist, I can no longer climb that tree. Now I have to bring in a crane in a truck, and the cost to remove
Yeah.
that literally skyrockets. So they were looking at very proactively making the hard decision to remove mature, healthy trees ahead of time. So,
okay.
And Nancy, I just wanted to say, I think that our plan, as the Arbor Commission with Michael's work, would be to have him go out, if this was to be passed or budgeted for, then have him go out and inventory everything and find the health of all these trees, the DBH, and we would make those decisions on what trees we would want to remove or save, and then come and present again to council, I imagine, to update you on.
and
on
to
what was
reiterate,
found.
we're fortunate to have Michael as our community tree steward through a program of the Maine Conservation Corps. And doing this work falls directly into his IPM,
Yes, integrated pest management.
which is part of the reason that he is here. So having him here to do this work is not costing the city anything, and it's not included in this budget.
So, and again, just looking at your memo for the first time, you've got the proposed approach and then the financial justification, and they read as though they're different projects. But is everything in the proposed approach, phase one and phase two, in the bullets of the financial justification?
Yeah, so the phase one is like the research and planning. We need to go
Right.
out, identify how many trees we're gonna treat, how many trees we're gonna get rid of, develop the management plan, establish the treatment cycles based on how many trees are we going to plan on treating. And then the phase two is actually going out, because phase one is gonna guide us on what is this actually gonna cost, and we hope to have that number for you before spring. Ideally, this time next year, or a little bit after this, is when we start treating. So what we're looking for is basically,
Okay.
we need to work on the plan in the summer and fall so that we can come to council and say, this is exactly how much money that we need to do this.
And again, your point that putting $100,000 this year, knowing that we'll be spending it
Yeah,
over.
and that wasn't like a dart at a dartboard.
Yeah,
That
no,
was,
no.
that was talking to, members of the Arbor Commission who are
Right.
experienced in this, as well as the gentleman from, a very large regional arborist company.
Right.
And he basically was like, for something like the city of Ellsworth, you're looking $95,000 realistically.
So does all of that, I'm not disagreeing with all of that, just wondering if all of that needs to be budgeted in fiscal year '27, because it says phase two beginning in 2027. So I'm
By the-
pushing back simply
Oh, I
about
see
the
what you
timing
mean.
of that $100,000.
Fiscal year '27
Spring.
starts in July.
understand.
And
it'll
so,
go
and
through
we need to
June.
be, like, a year from now is when we're gonna be paying for the treatment.
And it says beginning in 2027, so that's just my question is, do we need to budget all of that for fiscal year 2027, or does it go into
It would all be in 27.
2028?
Yeah, the injection time falls, early April. I think it's as the tree starts to wake up and everything. So you have to, there's
So
a
when the
very
cambium is
limited
slowing,
window.
If we're gonna talk forestry talk.
You need transpiration, evapotranspiration to be happening in order to pull.
So when it says beginning 2027, you are talking spring of 2027?
Yes.
Okay, that helps, I think, with justify the full amount being budgeted for this fiscal year.
I should note, I was a no on this one, for a lot of the other reasons on saying no to new requests. So this is not currently in the budget. We need to add 100,000, for it. I think there's a lot of good reasons. Obviously, I'm not a subject matter expert here, and we have 3 arborists in the room, that are, not you, but these 3, I think.
He
used to be an arborist.
Don't forget the forester.
3 arborists and a forester. I don't know, I could think it's maybe it's a capital as part of bonding for this, if it really is that big of a piece. Also, grant funding, private donations, I think should be looked at for this, but, so this is, there will be some areas where I can, I just noticed today, I was going through before I got into the budget, we have a violator enforcement fund and a dangerous building fund that's budgeted for the same thing for 20,000, I'm gonna pull that, so I'll get 20,000 back for that, but, this is a $100,000 increase, and he wants both of them, so, see, I even thought I had 20,000 in savings, and he wants both of them. So this one is, I understand, I could see the cost saving arguments here, and obviously it's the council's purview to bring these back into the budget. So if there's a majority council that wants it back in there, I can, Ashley will make a note, we'll put it back in there as an increase of 100,000, and we'll start looking elsewhere for some of the savings.
Well, I mean, first of all, doesn't this fit very nicely into the comprehensive plan of protecting green space? I would think. But it's also, what do we want our legacy to be? Because we'll be gone from this council room when you have the denuded landscape out there. And it's not, it seems like you can't imagine the effects now, but they're for sure. They're not maybe, they're not possibly. Like, I remember when they came to cut down the Dutch elm in front of our, I seriously do. It's gonna happen, so what do we wanna be?
This past fall, we removed all the remaining elm trees from the harbor.
Yeah.
There was a dozen of them.
Yeah.
I think they're American
And they were all
elms,
very
but
dead.
it was Dutch elm's disease.
Well,
that
it's American, it's a Dutch.
The Dutch gave us the disease, but they were American, those the Liberty trees. And Castine, I think, probably has some of the most left in the country. It was a huge effort to save them, and we still work on it every year. There's a lot of private donations for it.
I feel like, the Arbor Commission came out of the Dutch elm disease. They were so taken aback by the change of what became of High Street when all of those trees were removed, that they were moved in 1991 to actually establish or to put an Arbor Commission into the ordinance. We failed there with saving any of those elm trees, and you can still, the effect is still there. High Street is barren. It was never retreed, and we lost such a beautiful part of the canopy here, so.
It's also one of the warmest places in Ellsworth.
High Street?
High Street.
Not in a good way.
Yeah.
Was it the one that just
Sound
High Street?
lovely.
It was all the way up Main Street too, and up over Bridge Hill.
One thing that struck me when I attended the,
Oh, nasty trees.
it's not
forum.
the forum on this was how much prevention actually was truly worthy investment. Because Rodney has talked about how, I can do words, I promise, how, yes, it's a chunk of money now, but the sheer amount of money it's saving in the future and just buying time so we may not need this expense in the future.
Yeah, I think it would be the first time we'd be proactive on a
Yeah.
tree issue here in Ellsworth. And that's, for the Arbor Commission, that is our goal is to become more of a proactive body than a reactive body, because there is so much cost savings in the proactiveness of it.
And we're
But-
losing our beech trees
There's, yeah,
already.
there's the
Well,
list of.
it sounds like this is one of those things that falls under major cost drivers. Like, this isn't our fault, but we have to deal with it.
Well, I mean, full disclosure, I've also had students, ecology students who argue in my classes that we should just take them down. Just take them down, cut our losses, and and replant a disease resistant species, and now then that gets to be a big debate too. But that is an option. I mean, that's
I mean, that is a fair option, except that Roddy said that's gonna be more expensive because it's taking them down limb by limb because of where they are. We're not just going into timber harvest.
But the argument is not more expensive, but the argument is we go on this, we spend all this money on treatment, it's not gonna save them, then on top of that, we will have to
Interesting.
destroy them. So the argument that's being made is just take them down.
So, one of the things that I would say to that is that trees are the only public asset that actually appreciates over time. These trees give us benefits by capturing stormwater, capturing air pollutants, shading, providing windbreaks in the winter so you don't have to spend as much energy on air conditioning or heating of your homes. And the bigger the tree, the more benefits you get. So putting these it might seem like you're putting these trees on life support, but they are growing bigger and bigger, and they're providing more and more benefits to our community. So that, if you cut them down, then you end and planting a smaller tree, it could take 10+ years for that tree to replace what that larger tree was providing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's interesting to hear this debate.
It is.
So, Roddy, a side issue? I would be interested in bringing this to the cemetery commission to find out, can we borrow Michael and get an inventory of some of the major cemeteries to see if they're dealing with it
Yep.
there
So,
as well.
When we get into asset management portion of OpenGov, Michael and I are already conspiring because we are intending to put all of the publicly owned trees into that asset management tracker so we can inventory the health. We know where they are,
Right.
and we can manage that. We're actually really looking forward to riding bikes all around the city this summer.
Could we,
So it absolutely is something that we will be doing moving forward.
could we think about a private donation match requirement to kind of limit this a bit? Ask the Arbor Commission, Garden Club, other folks to try to mitigate this request a little bit. I'm trying to do so with Amy. I guess why I have a lot of empathy for this is I'm going to be spending a lot of my time begging for cash for the track for a while. And if we want to do something like this,
We should sell T-shirts.
It's not a bad idea.
the
Have a
group's
mascot.
putting
No,
forward
that's what I mean.
Mascot tree.
I think that's.
Another, not to get off on another tangent, but I did present endowment fund management policy at the Finance Committee meeting a few weeks back. And I know it's not an immediate solution, but if we can create a vehicle for public donation that we manage sustainably over time, something like, this is a perfect expense for something like an endowment fund.
yeah, maybe the city could
Or a
go 50,000 and
Yeah.
then there'd have to be 50,000 in grant match.
What
Or
was that, Charlie?
maybe the city could do 50,000 and then there'd be a 50,000 in grant or donation match that would have to be secured by April.
What's your
to-
sense of a realistic in the next year to be able to fundraise? Are there grants? Does Project Canopy
I-
get grants for this?
I have to be honest, I'm researching like 4 other grants right now. I have not looked into these ones.
Project Canopy can cover if we did need more money for an inventory or something like that, it'll cover it. I believe that EAB is also covered. The federal government used to give money specifically for this for the states to disperse. I don't know how much that program has been slashed.
And are we eligible for Project Canopy? I know we
Yes.
just got a grant.
Yeah, we
We
just
did.
received another grant from
Can
them, and
we
I
get-
don't believe they limit how many
Okay,
we have.
so it could keep
Oh,
going.
really?
I don't think they do, but I will double check. Don't quote me on it yet.
Yeah,
That
I
would
thought
be
we
good
were
for-
limited to the one per year, the 20,000 max per year, but I'm
Yes.
not sure if that's true. I mean, yeah.
That would be good information for when we bring this forward. But what's a realistic number there? Was it 20,000? Is 50,000 a realistic for Project Canopy, or is it 20?
20 is Project Canopy.
So we know to Charlie's trying to make everything work, if we brought this to 80 with 20, maybe 25, 75 with a little bit, I think 50,000 in fundraising is a huge goal with other fundraising going on, but it's also a,
People are really passionate about
we used
trees.
to talk
though.
about charismatic megafauna, and people will give money for cute big animals, and they will give money for beautiful big trees they drive by every day or walk by.
No, so you get AI to do a video with beautiful
Stop where you are.
ash trees talking. No, serious.
I'm gonna get you a tree costume.
Me?
So to get, if you're looking for numbers, is it like 75,000, 25,000 for now of what the city and what the state, we're not voting, we're just playing with.
I
what
can
might
see
be.
Ashley's saying, look, same for me. Like, we're just trying to find $400,000 or $500,000 out of this budget.
Did you want some antacid,
So,
Charlie?
so every time I hear we're going to go this way with it, and this is last cycle too. I was like so much going the other way. Yeah, but we'll figure it out.
I feel like we have a commission meeting, where are we in the month? We're towards the end
You
of
have
the
2
month.
weeks.
So 2 weeks, we have a commission meeting, and we can talk this through with everyone that has had, plenty of different perspectives on this, and see how they feel, and, see if that 50,000, or,
And the Arbor Commission will be here when you.
we're also here next
on-
week.
On the, next week's workshop.
Yep.
I kind of, I support this on philosophical grounds, and some of the general pieces. It's the, but I also like want to get the counterfactual too. Like, who can be the, and I don't have time to like really dig into all of these pieces on like, give me all the cities and towns that have done this, that have saved their trees, the ones that have lost all their emerald ash borers, and like how much it actually cost them.
It's
Like,
probably out there.
where is it at in their budget? Like, hey, this cost us X amount of more.
Forest Service.
Those pieces, all the grants that are in there. When will it's, there's gonna be a lot of tree change in Ellsworth and Maine over the next 150 years that I think some of which might be addressable and some of which is not.
Yeah,
Like
there
the
you go.
pine, birch, the state of Maine over the next couple hundred years is gonna be more like New Jersey in terms of its tree canopy. That's unavoidable in some ways because of larger, so, like, but if we're buying time for 30 to 50 years of keeping these, like, what is the end date on a lot of these trees? Is there a sub-option of this that we're saving just the ones at the library? How much does that cost? Just the ones at our main thoroughfares? So we're keeping some of that treescape and that beautification, but we're not doing, the full piece.
All of that, and I understand this is also cost of tree removal
Yes.
is included in here. It's not just the guys with chainsaws. This is gonna be dancing around power
Yeah.
lines, which I'm not willing to volunteer to do,
Nor am I.
so,
Yeah.
Thankfully, taking this job allowed me to not do that anymore.
yeah.
Do you know 100% that we're not already affected by
We
the
don't.
disease?
I don't know how we don't have EAB here. Like, I don't know a scenario where, for some reason, it's on the island and it's in Bangor and it
It's
didn't
not in the
stop
middle.
here. Yeah, the problem is that it takes time for you to start seeing the massive impacts of it. But I suspect we're gonna start seeing woodpecker browse. And they pull the bark off the tree to get to the larvae and chew on them. So I suspect we're gonna start seeing some of that in the next year or two. I wouldn't be surprised.
And that's, the whole idea is once they're here, it's too late. You gotta be proactive.
It'll be quite devastating to the area. All you have to do is drive down into, I think New Hampshire has always struck me
Yeah.
as looking quite awful on the sides of the highways and stuff of the damage of them, so.
And again, the key, it isn't cheaper to just cut them down, is what you're saying,
Yeah.
even over years. Anyways, a lot of
Yep.
math to do later. Because I think that was the first note I made was, well, we could just cut them down and replace them as a talking point.
The replacement costs are also, can be high, depending on the size of tree you plant.
Yep.
We've got a nursery.
We do, with like 400 trees in it.
Yeah, so actually
Almost
we would be
there.
at a loss there.
No, just kind of looking at it from the perspective of the public, or there's a lot of gray areas in here, and it's hard to communicate them all, especially on something that is in the future. It is, we can't show them
And-
right now.
And I think I'm never one to jump on the bandwagon, but you don't have to look very far to see municipalities right next to us that are investing this much money or more in this management plan and this treatment.
I was
The island is
depressing.
doing this, or is it the island, or what's?
Mount Desert Island, Bangor is, they have like way beyond what we're recommending.
Put it in the archives.
Is what they've already budgeted for, and they're implementing treatments this spring as well as Camden. So,
I appreciate that we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
This was a dream of mine just 3 or 4 years ago. So it's a tough conversation because obviously we don't want to have to spend the money, and it's easier to close our eyes and not, I think, but we do have a decision here. We can change how the landscape looks
Yeah,
here in Ellsworth.
and this is one of the decisions where however we do it, it'll look like nothing changed, so there's,
Yeah.
even like people driving
Proving
through,
a negative.
it's like, why, but it, yeah.
But the question is, what are we not gonna do if we do this?
Yeah.
So, that's why we have workshops to play with it all and put it all on the table. So,
Shall we?
unless
let
Michael wanted to
Danielle
say
and-
something.
Maybe it's worth dredging up some
I'll say
pictures
one.
of the Dutch.
You wanna come up to the mic, sorry,
Yeah.
Michael?
So people can see what happens.
yeah,
When I was doing this inventory last year, I noticed that a lot of these ash trees sit on the corner of a road, right when you're gonna turn in from another bigger road. Anyways, I was watching a webinar about what people experience when storms come through, like a tornado, and destroys a bunch of their trees within their city. A lot of people forget how to navigate their towns because they use trees as landmarks.
oh, wow. Yeah.
But it is a gray area. Some people had the tree removed by a tornado, and they're like, "Oh, I'm happy that tree's gone. I didn't want to pay for that," you know, or it was too close to the house, what have you. But most of those people still decided to plant another tree. They may have put it a little bit further from the house or a different location, but they liked having that tree in their yard. I just thought it was interesting that we can forget where we're driving without those landmarks, those big trees, those historical parts of the town that we come to recognize. That's it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, well, Danielle and Michael can split unless you really want to hang out.
I got a cheesesteak waiting for me at home.
Thank you for coming.
Much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Also a good example of why I'm no longer the tree steward in the city of Ellsworth. Yeah. That does kind of seem
What
like
about the
tree
elk?
warden. Sorry, is that a sneed? Is that a sneed? Sneed. It's from the Lorax. Sorry, that was deep cut. That was a deep cut.
Just wanna know if it comes with a cool hat.
That's what it looks like. In the
We can't just rename the position the Ellsworth Lorax?
Yeah.
We are
That
gonna get
works.
her a very large mustache to wear for the inspections.
The Onceler. Oh, I'm gonna give that a.
Good night, Danielle. Thanks, Michael.
See ya.
I could see that.
I know, that's why I didn't go sit down. Facilities admin.
Sorry, we're gonna 37. Page 37.
With a handout. Right?
Yep. Yeah, it's a brief one. Oh, there's a handout on it too.
No, there was no,
I don't think
there's no memo for facilities admin.
No.
Sorry.
Okay. Parks and Recreation budget overview, we save for another day.
Yeah, we can. We might be able to go into it, but if people are feeling, it's been a long week.
It's been a week, yeah.
So facilities admin, this line item would cover costs for the short-term rental support that's being offered in the Moore Center right now. and our plan is to expand this to Union River Center for Innovation as well. It's basically the individual who manages the scheduling of short-term rentals, loads all that onto a calendar. This person would facilitate tours for people who want to come see the space before they decide to rent a space, and then also is responsible for the turnover in between rentals, as well as the staff that's there in the event somebody wants to rent outside of the normal operating hours of the Moore Center. We obviously want to have somebody there and present, and this would cover that cost.
And to be clear, you are now talking commercial short-term rentals of city property, not
Yes.
short-term residential?
That is correct.
We were talking
Yep,
about
like spaces
earlier.
in the Moore Center, and spaces down at Union River Center for Innovation.
Okay.
And then, just a higher level look at this, we are in the process of implementation of a recreation management platform called Civic Plus. And so this role is looking at right now evolving into oversight of basically rental of all of our facilities. So they'd manage the seasonal rentals of docks, harbors, the docks, slips, moorings. Somebody wants to rent the pavilion at the Knowlton Park, somebody wants to rent the amphitheater at the Knowlton Park, somebody wants to rent all of the Knowlton Park, somebody wants to have an event at the gazebo at the harbor. This is the person who's adminning all of that business as far as generating revenue for renting those facilities.
How is that happening right now?
A person and an Excel spreadsheet and lots of phone calls and checks.
Time's up. Time's up. And the I'm sorry, the Moore Center, the person that's currently doing that job is the front desk person, correct? And that is funded right now through the Y?
For now,
Yep.
That is a YMCA employee. This money is basically a cost share of the labor cost of that employee. What's been identified is this person is not working full-time for the Y because they're managing what is now our short-term rental program, but they're still under the employ of the YMCA while they're there doing that work. So this basically came from a conversation of them saying, we'll do this for you, but we want this much of the rental income. And this was a smaller number.
Gotcha.
Especially if we look at over, like, my main goal with the Moore Center and other properties is to increase that revenue generation. And if we're working off a percentage and we make an agreement that we're gonna give them a percentage of the profit of the revenue, we're gonna pay them more and more and more every year rather than putting in a flat fee right now. And then not to get too much into the weeds and too far down the road, but once we have an established Parks and Rec program, I really think there's a lot of opportunity here to institute some recreation programming that complements what the YMCA is offering, that complements what's happening with youth sports in the area. And this individual would be overseeing all of that through activities, programming, facilities. It's the admin for all of the bigger picture stuff coming down the road.
Does it include the fields there?
Demeyer Field? It will, yes.
Okay.
And when we get to the budget, there will be revenue that more than offsets this, otherwise it wouldn't be worth doing.
Yes.
Yeah, and I note this one this one was in the yes category, but kind of like short-term rentals under a contingency or under a qualification that it's also in my memo, some things to say goodbye to this year. I mean, wasn't a huge amount, but it felt like the Union River Center for Innovation, not the entire building right now, but the biotech innovation hub, I think that idea had its time. It hasn't really moved forward, so my recommendation is we're gonna eliminate the kind of the consulting on that, the fees on that, really try to make it as budget positive as just limit, the additional programming that was there. It will be a cost, there's not, there's loss here, but that'll save enough in this to reallocate the 25,000 to here. But then as Roddy said, with a little bit of an expanded portfolio, helping to manage rentals of those spaces. But going for Erky for next year, we're really looking to just keep it as a rentals, not kicking anybody out, but adjusting the rates, kind of like what Roddy did with the Moore Center to make it, here's what it costs to rent this place, to get it to be a budget positive as a shared asset for the community. Our human resources department's there now. We've already said goodbye to a couple of the larger tenants in the biotech category, so we're kind of on hold with those spaces to move forward with them. Should the council agree, just to kind of I think it could be a food service hub. I think there's some good ideas on community kitchens there. But we also have the potential really big village partnership initiative that could connect the marina to the downtown, and how that facility fits into some of those larger overarching investments, recreation, food hub, other pieces, I think are really worthy of discovery, but it's going to take a while to get there. And we have a lot of staff time and dedication and allocations going on right now. So for the near term, trying to make Erkey budget positive this year, not using TIF allocations to keep it above water, and then that should keep enough space for this to be somewhat budget neutral. Although everything as a negative is budget positive, so.
And it isn't a new hire, it's cost sharing of an existing staffer, and we're bringing in more of the revenue going more.
And does this person know anything about emerald ash borers?
Unfortunately not.
Nice to
Come on,
try.
Roddy.
Nice.
Come on.
We can teach them.
We gotta save some money here somewhere.
Just to support this person a little bit though, last Friday night, we had our family fun night at the Moore Center, which was an overwhelming success. We had roughly 60 kids, we were 60 people in that building that were parents and littles. We fed them pizza and salad. They ran around in the gym. We had a facilitated arts and crafts project. It cost us literally nothing to do it. I think the biggest expense was like $160 for the pizza. It was nothing. And we had 60 people in the building for 2.5 hours. All the kids went home exhausted. Parents went home smiling. It was an awesome event. And this individual, who's our facilities admin, was the inspiration behind that and said, we're gonna do this. It's a great idea. And then at the end of the night, she handed me the tea from Brian E. Moore School that fell off the building 11 years ago and just said, put this back up. And so next week, we're putting the tea back up on the Moore Center.
I can confirm that kids did return exhausted. My stepson was pink in the face
Yeah.
from running, so he had so much fun.
Are you saying there were no video games for them to play there?
No, it was open gym. We screened
Perfect.
a movie and they did arts and crafts.
Perfect.
The bean bags are wonderful.
Yep.
And volunteers were staff and the community members too, right? That's them who's doing it. It's awesome.
Yep.
So next steps, next week we have commissions, committees, external organizations, in time permitting, which probably won't, for recreation, just like tonight. So if you guys want to preview some of those budget areas, you can go into your table of contents, find section 5, external organizations, 337. Just a bit of an apology on my end. We tried to revamp this process because it was very unwieldy. In fact, you'll see that the binders have a little too much space this year because they were completely full last year, and a lot of that was due to like a lot of the external organizations doing a ton of information to try to support their requests, which we found oftentimes just, was cumbersome. You couldn't, so we put a process on Rever where people could submit, but we didn't put a word limit in that, and then it sort of triggered, like when you print it out and like everything got very small. So there is information out there. I apologize. It's not as ideal. I think in some future world I could see tabbing each organization, getting a little bit more templated there. Just like always with these, we're getting there piece by piece, but I kind of in some ways feel like the process that I tried to make it easier might have made it a little harder this year in the external organizations, but Ashley and teams have reached out to them to let them know about this and say, hey, please bring memos or substantiation, kind of like what we did today. So there is some information there. Those are all flat funded. That was part of the commission and the committee. They didn't get flat funded this year?
Some of
Oh,
them are
that's-
flat funded, but some of them are not flat funded.
Sorry, I thought all of them were flat funded, okay.
Last year, they were all flat funded. This year, some of them are flat funded, and some of them, the committee recommends what they requested, and there are some actual increases based off what the committee voted on as well.
Okay. So we'll go into those next week. That's always a good one, and I know staff have been instructed for their relevant committees and commissions to hopefully reach out. thank you, Councilor Martineau, for your great recommendation on your budget for that one, or that, toeing the line here.
Did you do?
I asked for no money. But now I really would like a drive shaft, but he won't give it to me.
She pulled down her illegal request and increased the illegal request.
Yeah, that's a fair trade-off.
Can you get any money from like a dog video or something?
Yeah, if you get a grant for it. We can do some private fundraising.
Yeah.
Great, well, we'll,
I'm sorry that he won't do that for you.
Worth a shot.
He's getting, what you can do, it doesn't hurt to ask.
keep,
You
and
can, you can buy an e-bike for less than your car park, so
I should note that
that's your solution.
You would never get me
I-
anywhere.
I like that.
I'd be constantly on the
I'm-
road
I'm
pedaling
picking
my
out
ass
where-
all over town.
Yeah, this is.
Get your wicker basket.
yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I see that with the external.
This is really. Don't worry.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's getting there.
We are done, adjourned, we're done.